Welcome to the Forged by Trust podcast. I'm your host, Robin Dreeke, former U.S. Marine, spy recruiter, best-selling author, and your trust and communication expert. Today's episode is brought to you by my guest, Wayne Brown. The ultimate 5-day challenge. Learn new ways to maximize your stakeholder value. Have you ever heard your senior management team talking about increasing stakeholder value and finding yourself confused about how you can contribute to achieving that goal? This is exactly what Johan, a sales executive who, just like many of us, is trying to solve in the next live case study on the ET Project's quarterly challenge. If you truly want to learn how to create added value and strengthen your stakeholder relationship in the process, then join us for this free challenge. Commencing on 24 January, for 1 hour per day across 5 days, Wayne will step you through the process to achieve just that. This challenge will provide a wealth of knowledge, skills, and tools to help you boost your career and relationships to reach that next level. Go to the challenge page's link in the show notes, and it's totally free. Coming up next on the Forged by Trust podcast.
What I realized was that if I could understand them well enough, then I could also bring out the best in them. It was very much that situational fluency, understanding their business, showing a genuine authenticity around that conversation. I would say if you really wanted to create more impact in your life and your career, there's 3 elements that would go a long way. The first is to become a curious listener. The second element that I would stack onto that is then to become a knowledge broker. And the third thing is, therefore, to become a thought leader.
Welcome to the show. I'm Robin Dreeke, and on the Forged by Trust podcast, we decode the interpersonal communication skills of the world's most acclaimed forgers of trust. We unlock the skills and techniques from spies, spy recruiters, master interrogators, globally recognized behavioral experts, C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, acclaimed authors, and thought leaders. Each episode provides specific actions that you can immediately apply to any aspect of your personal or professional life. Today's episode, Mastering Success Behaviors, is with my good friend, executive coach, author, and speaker, Wayne Brown. When Wayne Brown is not deep in conversation with his clients, you can find him equally engaged in activities with his wife and daughter, who he describes as the 2 most tolerant people in the world. With 45 years as a professional executive, Wayne draws on his experience having worked in MNCs with diverse cultures from countries across Europe, India, the Middle East, Asia, and North and South America. This background brings unique insights and in-depth knowledge to his coaching practice. Using an evidence-based approach informed by neuroscience, organizational, and positive psychology studies at leading universities, Wayne supports his clients to manage their evolving business landscape. He is passionate about helping executives and teams develop their leadership capabilities and thrive in their corporate environment. During today's episode, we talk about the value of coaching and mentoring, relationships opening doors, bringing out the best in others, situational fluency, success through curiosity, and self-awareness. So, with that, welcome to the show, Wayne.
Thank you, Robin.
Wow, your background, I don't even have enough time to pour through it because you have delved so deeply into so many wonderful things in life that resonate strongly with not just myself, but with everyone, especially when it comes to engaging humans and human behavior. And I really love your passion for coaching. That is such a great calling in life. I love backstories because the origins of where we start often are the preemptors of where we end up. So you know where I'm going. How did you find this passion in life for coaching? Where did that begin?
Gosh, that's a long journey.
It is. Pick any point you want.
You know, I've always been a people person, I would say, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to mingle with a lot of people through sport, through social activities. So, probably coaching was preceded by mentoring. So I've been more of a mentor over the last 30 odd years than a coach.
That's a great distinction you just made there, because not a lot of people know that distinction. Can you talk a little bit briefly about the difference between a mentor and a coach?
Yeah. So I have to be very careful now because I have some colleagues that may challenge me on this. Look, in the pure sense of the word, mentoring is meant to be more telling or giving advice, whereas coaching is in a more pure form where we don't advise, we partner with and co-create.
Right.
So we believe as a coach that every individual has the answers inside, and our job is to help them find those answers. Now, I've just had on my own podcast David Clutterbuck, who's one of the godfathers of mentoring and coaching in Europe, and we had this discussion. And he has a slightly different view. He believes that mentoring is even a higher echelon than coaching, because mentoring enables you to draw on your experience to support the individual. And I tend to be more in that camp, to be honest with you. Right. So when I coach, I draw on my mentoring capacity because of my broad experience background.
I'd imagine that when you're in that role as a coach, the mentoring you're bringing from that broad background enables you to ask the questions to enable the person to find their path, because you've had experience on it already. So it's not quite a leading question, but it's a question where it'll help them move in the direction that they are choosing to move in. Is that about right?
It's very, very much the case, right? And what I'm always conscious of is trying to avoid leading or taking people through a funneling process of questions to help them extract their own solution. But there will be times where I might say to a person I'm coaching, we've been going around in circles a little bit here, and if it's okay with you, I'm just going to step out of the coaching arena, and I'd like to put my mentoring cap on for the moment and just give you an insight to an experience I've had in this area. Sure. Whether you do anything or not with it, but I think it might be of value. So you have to tread lightly and carefully, I think, between the two, but it can be achieved.
And it's such a treat when you're seeing the eyes light up on the other side. There is no doubt. Absolutely. You started off by saying that you've always been a people person, now, whether it's in sport or anything else. And then also when you're talking about coaching, which is very otherly focused, outwardly focused.
Yeah.
What types of things made you focus on others? So what made you a people person when you're growing up?
Tough question, actually, in not in giving you an answer, but tough question in the sense that my family environment, my father was an alcoholic. And so I grew up the only son within the family. And I won't say that I was expected to act in the role of the male adult, but I probably assumed that capacity to some extent. And I was fortunate in the neighborhood that I grew up that there were a lot of other children similar age. And we formed a very strong connection. We weren't in a very wealthy neighborhood. And so we grew up of average means, which was no disadvantage. Don't take that the wrong way. But we grew up really leveraging each other for support. And so I learned early in life to rely on others and also to be open when others needed me. And as my career then in sport more so, because at a younger age I was very much involved in sport, and I had the good fortune of being, probably at that age, I had a talent rather than a developed skill for a couple of different sports. And therefore I played the role of captain for the teams. And that sort of gave me a grounding in how to develop my leadership capacity, but also to work with others. And I really enjoyed it. And so it built from there.
It's always fascinating. It takes one to recognize another. Very, very similar background. And as you said, aren't necessarily good or bad. They just are, and what you're going to do with it. And you really hit on a few things in there that are really healthy. And that is, you didn't really focus on the financial aspects of life, but on the relationships that you forged. Many people that have that kind of challenging back and do become captains of football teams and all that, it tends to be a lot of self-centeredness, not from, look at me, narcissistic type of way, but more of a survival type mode. But it sounds like it wasn't quite that much, or maybe it was. I'm just curious, was there a switch that flipped, or you were always, when you were the captain of the football team or whatever sport it was, were you there, you actually knew what leadership was, where it was about others, or were you there as like, hey, I'm the captain, look at me?
Yeah, so I can't say that I really ever saw it as an egotistical role. I and I'm trying to think back now. Was there an occasion or some specific trigger? But I think no, I don't think so. I was a pretty humble kid. I grew up in an environment with my mother, and she was very supportive. So,
Right.
I just enjoyed life
Well,
in amongst dealing with my father.
yeah, you said some great things in there. Humble kid and just enjoyed life. What made you
Mm,
humble enough to enjoy life at that time? What experiences in
yeah.
there do you think caused that?
Mm. Well, we didn't start with money, so I didn't grow up with the mindset of I need to have money to do what I want to do, and so we grew up very conscious of being happy with what we had,
Right.
and I think that probably rubbed off in terms of my own personality. But there was a lot of things that just fell into place. I wouldn't say that there was one specific attribute that I had. I think I was fortunate. I, to give you an example, so and I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole, but when I was 4 years old, my parents bought a farm or co-shared in a purchase of a farm. And so at that very young age, I got to work with my hands, planting peas and beans and picking watermelons and pumpkins and helping my parents load them in the truck and drive them to the place where we sold them. So I sort of learned how to be of service from a really young age.
Right.
And then we had a lot of fun at that stage as well. But, then moving to the next location, which was only when I was 6, and I lived there essentially until I left home. And so it was in a road called School Road in a very small suburb of in Australia. And the group that lived in that road, we still have a connection today.
Wow.
So, we just had this very close-knit community. And I guess that was very largely part of the shaping of who I am.
Absolutely. You said you had these great relationships, and I love when chatting with beautiful people like you, when you're going through and describing trauma, and most people have experienced trauma, and you say how fortunate you were.
Mm.
Isn't that funny? And
Yeah,
you're
it
fortunate
is.
because you're describing these great, rich relationships. What do you think made you so likable? Why did people love to be a resource? Because you say you got lucky. Lucky is luck. I don't believe in it. I believe that we create it because people want to be there for us. So what made you so likable?
I think I had a very can-do approach to life. So if somebody wanted assistance, I was more than happy to assist. If
Nice.
I have very fond memories of my brother-in-law who was 6 years older than me. He had a brother my age, so we lived 2 doors apart. My sister was his age, his brother was my age, so we had a very close relationship. And my sister and he got married. They moved into a house that was a very let's say modest house, and his brother and myself and he basically renovated this house to nothing spectacular, but that's where I got a lot of my grounding into using my hands and being very operational focused. And so all of these factors together just really created that environment for me where I was always happy to be working with other people, supporting their needs.
Right.
It wasn't about something that I needed at that time, because I didn't really have anything I was focused on that I had a need for that I recall. I'm
Right.
sure I did, but I don't recall anything specifically. but I really enjoyed the engagement with other people, learning new activities. I was always curious, as an example. And
There's my favorite word in the world. You're curious, you're forging relationships, and you're curious. So let's keep that journey going. So where'd you go to university, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, well, that's a big leap forward.
Well, we don't have to go that leap forward. Hey, we'll go at your pace.
No, it's okay. The reason it is because I didn't follow the normal path that most people follow.
Oh, then I want to go the abnormal path. Let's hear the abnormal path. I'd much rather do that one.
I was a very average student,
Right.
in high school. My passion at that age was sport. Academics didn't really have a high profile within our family. And therefore, because I had a very early introduction to sport, my parents were both very good tennis players. My father coached Davis Cup, or at least one of the players of Davis Cup. So, they encouraged me from a sports perspective. And therefore, that was my real focus, particularly at that age.
And was there an expectation your parents had of you that you're going to go down a certain track, or they would just encourage nothing but sports?
They were fantastic in that regard, that they never pushed me in any one direction. So if I decided I wanted to do something, they were always very supportive.
Right.
Even my father, to be honest. So I have many great stories around playing rugby league. My mother was extremely passionate sideline supporter, very vocal, her and her cousin. And my father, as a result, would stand on the other side of the field so that he wouldn't be embarrassed by his wife. And so, they were at every game that I played. They supported me not only in league, but in every sport that I undertook, whether it was swimming, tennis, cricket, football. So they supported that, but they also had an expectation that I did what I needed to do to get through from an academic perspective.
Right.
But they never pressured me to become something I didn't want to be.
So what path did you start walking? Any idea what you were going to wind up doing?
Well, I had the realization that I wasn't going to be doing anything specifically academic, and I didn't have that. Interestingly enough, the first job that I was awarded, so I was actually given the job, was to be a bridge builder. And that interested me a lot. However, I didn't have the academics to back it up. And what it meant was I had to go to university 5 nights a week to do physics and chemistry. And
so who offers you a job to be a bridge builder? How'd that happen?
Yeah, this was my charm at that age.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There you go. Your relationships got you a job that you're not even closely qualified for yet. So tell me about that real quick. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, I don't know how many people applied for it, but I know the shortlisting was 43 people, I believe.
And you applied for it.
I applied for it. Now, what attracted me to the role was not, thinking about becoming an engineer and that aspect of it. I liked the hands-on nature of the role. And I think that's what I probably sold them on, because at that time I lived outside, I had very olive skin. And I remember one of the comments even today, right? This is, just going back 45 plus years. He said, "You have fantastic skin for working outside. You'd be perfect for this role." And it wasn't until after they told me I had the job and they said, "Okay, so, there's a few things that you'll need to do to be able to move through." And it was an apprenticeship, I believe, at the time. And they said, we've made an appointment for you at the university. You need to go and see this faculty member, etc., and they'll explain. So I'm very naive at this young age. So I've wandered along and we sit down and he said, "Okay, so let's have a look at your results. That doesn't look so great. All right, so we're going to have to do a bridging course to get you to this level, and then you're going to have to do this." And it ended up that 5 nights a week I would have to be studying. And, I just made the decision at that moment, well, that's not my life. And so I rang up my very short-term employer and said, look, I'm sorry, but that's not the job for me. So, yeah.
What made
So that's
them?
where it started.
That's amazing. What made them select you? Besides your great outdoor looking skin, there had to have been something there. I mean, you have all these applicants. What do you think they saw?
Well, I never asked the question, to be honest. So that's probably an indication of the type of person I was. I always connected very easily. And so that's the only thing that I could put it down to, was they saw that I had the attitude. Rather than looking for the academic skill, they could see that, this person in front of them was a can-do type of person, and provided we can get him across the line academically, he'll fit the role. That's my take on it. Right?
Yeah,
So,
it definitely is. So what was next after you decided not to be a bridge builder?
well, the job I ended up taking was electrical. In Australia, we have different titles in different states, but where I was in the state of Queensland, I took on an apprenticeship with the supply authority, the power supply authority, as an electrical fitter mechanic, an apprentice electrical fitter mechanic. So it was a 4-year apprenticeship, and that's where I started. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So now we'll fast forward a little bit.
Mm.
You have obviously amazing people skills at a young age. What was the first major role you had where that was really tested? And what did you learn from it after you took it?
I wouldn't say it was the first one, but there's a couple that come to mind. So, and they're both somewhat sports related. So I developed a ritual early in my league career where I noticed that if I was experiencing nausea or butterflies before the match, that normally preceded me playing well.
Mm.
And based on that, I then started to observe other people and how they prepared in advance. And there was a whole raft of different mindsets. And what I realized was that if I could understand them well enough, then I could also bring out the best in them.
Right.
So as we came to that final 10 minutes before the game, part of my ritual was to make sure that I was in the right space, but then to make sure that not everybody, because I couldn't connect with 13 people in the team, but I had specific people that I would make sure we had our heads in the right place. And
what did you do to get their heads in the right place?
Well, I just really knew what their ritual was. So
Right.
I would sit down with them, I'd talk with them, where are you at the moment? How are you feeling? Do you have that sense? If not, what have we got to do? How do we get you there, type of thing? And it became quite simple because people expected it after a while. Now, I didn't do it every game, of course, but for the major games, this was part of something I became known for. And I took that then, the second event that comes to mind, I took that then into high school, and I was captain of the sports group within the high school. And of course, competing against other schools, we want to make sure, and I was captain of the football team and, all the sports related activities.
Right.
And so similar approach, understanding the people that you're working with or you're engaged with, and being able to help them get to that peak performance level before we have to perform, was something that I've learned early and sort of carried through with me.
Yeah. So from there, how did you make that leap into the corporate world?
The transition point from field to, let's say, white collar, from blue collar to white collar, I still remember the exact day.
Oh, that's cool.
It was 27. I was 27 years old. I was living in Perth, Western Australia, and I'd become involved in a number of things: politics. I started being an activist against apartheid in South Africa. And, I was, for whatever reason, I was just transitioning, right?
What caused that? I mean, that's unique. What was a trigger that made you empathetic towards the apartheid in South Africa?
Yeah, again, not so surprising, given I've always had this people interest, right? And at the time, there was a movie that I happened to watch, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a movie around some of the activists fighting against apartheid. It wasn't Mandela, but it was some of the activists. And it just showed, and I happened to be there, and I took an interest and did some more research on it. And at the same time, I'd stopped playing sport because I just moved across Australia to the other side of Australia, so I wasn't playing sport. And look, at that time, I developed an interest to go back into learning. I became devoted or a little bit obsessed, you might say, with learning.
Right.
I had started a business when I was 23. I built my first home when I was 23, and I started my own business when I was 23. But it was more out of facilitating a need I had at that stage. As at the age of 27, it was more out of curiosity that drove me in this direction, and very much developed this, I would call it, insatiable desire to understand business at a far deeper level.
Right.
And at that time, I can remember the conversation I had with not my boss, but a couple of levels up. And I said, I want a piece of your action. I like what I see you guys doing, and I have an interest in the product that you've just released. We were at a new product release, and I was, one of the operational hands-on people that were involved in supporting the rollout. But I wanted to move more into the managerial side of things, and that's where the conversation started. And it was only a short time before that I enrolled in university. Right. So that's why I say I didn't take the normal path to university. So it wasn't until I was 27 that I actually went back to university and did night school. Yeah.
That's when the curiosity struck you, is what happened. Yeah.
And exactly.
And what was your major curiosity? What were you studying back then that finally sparked?
Well, I did business administration.
Right.
That was really to just understand more of the general nature of business.
Right. So what was the next jump then? So we got our spark at 27 that we're going to now transition from our hands to a blend of everything. What was your next big leap?
The next leap was to really start pursuing that interest, which meant that I started traveling a lot.
Right.
So I'm just trying to remember now. So by the age of 29, I'd moved from Perth across to New Zealand. And I was in New Zealand 6 years in 4 different locations, pursuing this new interest. So when a new role emerged, so to give you an example, so I went over to New Zealand working in a low-level leadership capacity. There was an opportunity that was in the capital in Wellington. There was an opportunity then that took me down to the South Island to set up and run a small operation myself as a solo person for this company, which all of these shifts and steps taught me huge amount of new skills, knowledge, and gave me a lot more confidence. And then I moved to top end of New Zealand to Auckland, and then eventually back to Wellington. So I figured, hey, I've done the full circuit. It's time to move out. So after 6 years, I then went back to Australia, but each time progressing to a higher level, if you like, or a different role in the corporate world.
We all kind of follow a path of awareness. What was your major things you were learning along the way? Was it people oriented? Was it process oriented? Was it a blend?
Definitely people oriented. But I also started to develop my skill sets in specific areas. So I learned that I was quite good in sales. Came very naturally for me. So where I felt that my strength laid in sales was that I knew the background workings of the product. And so when I was in front of a customer, I could be both the technical advisor as well as be able to, understand what it is they wanted. So when I would go and meet somebody, we would become close to best friends within the first couple of discussions, right?
And that's such a beautiful skill set. What do you think it was that made that relationship so fast and so solid?
Yeah. Well, today's term, I didn't know this term at the time, but situational fluency. So one of my gifts, because of the way that I grew up, being very hands-on, very involved, was to understand multiple businesses. And the business area I was in the construction area. And so it was a perfect fit for me because I had a genuine interest in construction. So when I met my customers, my conversation was about their business, not about our product.
Right.
So it was very much that situational fluency, understanding their business, showing a genuine authenticity around that conversation, and talking about things, different stages of the project. In project management, for instance, and I later realized that I had a forte in managing projects, but in project management, when you're designing your schedule, you build in what they call float. Right. And float is really a buffer time allocation. And so if we're the subcontractor to the main contractor and I'm trying to win the project through that main contractor, then I'll go there and talk to them about some of the challenges that are likely to come up during different stages of their project to demonstrate that I understood their business, not just looked at my own area of interest and my product, but to demonstrate that I understood the challenges they were facing.
Right. And I know you have some fantastic areas of strength. And one of them that you shared before we talked is people and cultures. So with this background of yours and your in-depth knowledge of traveling, business, so describe the importance and how that manifests with people and cultures and how you make that focused on others.
Yeah. Well, I would also throw that curiosity element in there.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, curiosity is the power that fuels everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like the perfect storm in many aspects for me, because I am genuine in my interest when I meet somebody new, or I travel to a new location, or I am there for the first time. I'll give you an example. So when I first came to China almost 18 years ago.
And for the listeners, tell everyone where you're at right now.
Right at the moment, sitting in Shanghai.
So, there you go. Thank you.
I've been based either here or Hong Kong for the last 18 years. But when I first came here, the thing that actually got me the job was not my interview skill and nailing the interview. In fact, I probably would have lost it had that been the case. But it was my curiosity to see some of the factories here in China, see how they did their installation, firsthand.
But isn't that part of the interview? It sounds like I doubt anyone else had that depth of curiosity, correct?
Absolutely. So the people interviewing me, only one of them was Chinese. So one was German and one was Australian. So the Australian was the reason I was there, because he interviewed me in Australia. Then he said, look, he was the COO at the time for Asia Pacific. He said, we've got this role in China. We'd love to bring you over and meet the team. And yeah, look, I probably being a little bit critical of myself, but it could have gone better in terms of the discussion. But based on what I was told afterwards, the thing that really clenched it for me was my request. They didn't offer for me to
Right.
go and look in the factory or to go and look on the job sites or to meet anyone. I requested, look, I'm going to be here for another day, is what I said to them. The interview was scheduled for 9 a.m. I ended up walking into the interview at 6 p.m. Right. And that whole period in between, I'm standing in a small office looking across to the job site where they wanted me to come and be the project director for. It was a 101-story building. And that's where I spent my day looking out the window, planning how I would approach that construction. and interrupted only by the COO coming in and apologising profusely every couple of hours. So, we're so far behind and everything's running. It's just a bad day. Hang in there. We'll get to you soon enough. And,
Right.
and it was 6 p.m. So anyway, probably one of the reasons I didn't perform as well as I hoped. But the schedule was that I was going to be there and have a free day the following day. I said, look, I'm here. I've got no real plan, but what I would love to be able to do is, go back to Australia with some real insight about how business is conducted here in China. And so they organised to take me to the factory, which was about an hour and a half from where we were, to take me to a couple of job sites, to meet a couple of the installation crews, etc. And, again, in all genuineness, I really enjoyed it.
Which makes you very congruent. Your curiosity is very congruent with your verbals, your nonverbals. And so that engenders great trust, because when people see you, what you see is what you get, because you make people feel safe by those behaviors. Awesome.
Very, very true. And it's not something I set out to do. It's just natural. Yeah, I've had that comment. I had when I used to spend a lot of time in India and working with different teams, and we had some visitors from our headquarters in Germany with us one day, and they made a similar comment when I was working with some of the teams, that it was, they'd never come across somebody that was that deep into the detail, that could relate with the people at all the levels in such a natural way. And so, that's been one of my blessings for sure.
So you see the value of curiosity, very obviously. Do you coach that into people? How would you do that?
So I have to say, I'm not always successful. I have an 8-year-old daughter. And she really puts me to the test in this regard. So, I'm a big believer in EQ, which may not be a surprise. And
for those listening don't know, that's emotional intelligence.
Yes. And, if we go back to the original form of EQ, there were 5 pillars. So there was self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, empathy, and motivation. So I'm a big believer in self-awareness in so many aspects is a starting point for people really to develop. Until you can establish the capacity to be able to catch yourself and be aware of what you're doing, it's very hard to make any transition, small or large. And so that's typically where I start with people, is we start to work on how can I become more self-aware. And through that, we then, depending on what they want to achieve, if we're talking about curiosity, then we'll look at what could be some of the triggers to make people more curious, and how can we catch ourselves in those moments to reinforce that moment in time.
What are some of the challenges that you've had, that people have, with becoming self-aware? What are some of the hindrances they have?
I don't know if you've ever heard of the ladder of inference. It's a model or a theory, I guess, that came out of a couple of professors, Chris Argyris and Donald Schoen from Harvard, way back in the 70s or 80s. And essentially, it's if you picture a ladder and you have 7 rungs on the ladder. And what happens with all of us is when we're in a situation, we react to the situation based on the data we have at hand. Mm. And when we're missing some data, our brain doesn't like having that gap. And so the brain very quickly fills that gap with past experiences. Now, whether those experiences are factual, whether they're essentially our reality, whether that's the real reality or our own map of reality. Yeah. And so as we go deeper down the rabbit hole, we go higher up the ladder. And where we started with a situation, all of a sudden the situation becomes something that is how we see it based on our beliefs, our assumptions, our biases. And so when I'm working with people in this particular area, we will start by helping them to see that reality. And a nice way of doing it is to say, go and ask a couple of other people how they see this same situation. And it becomes very, very opening to get different perspectives of exactly the same situation. And then as a coach, it's a beautiful moment because you can say, well, how's that possible, guys? And so you say, what do you see now is happening? And would it be possible if you were able to step back first from this situation and consider it from different multiple perspectives to become more aware and self-aware and start to apply reason rather than just intuition?
Right. What are some other values of coaching?
So what I enjoy the most, and I believe creates the greatest value, is the opportunity for people to learn how to reflect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a lot, and I had a guest on one of my shows, one of my episodes, Dr. Marsha Reynolds.
For everyone listening too, what's the name of your show?
Sorry, the ET Project, ET being Executive Talent, which is
excellent.
The group that I try and support. And she says it beautifully. As coaches, in the majority of programs that you do as a coach when you're learning to be a coach, the focus is on asking the right questions. And as she points out, the questions should come after the opportunity for the person you're coaching to be able to sit back, reflect, look inwardly as well as outwardly, to really start to see, what's occurred, to be able to become more self-aware. And then the questions can help to then open that up further and shift them from where they are to where they want to get to. So I think reflection is probably something, I know many coaches use it, but I would say for the majority of coaches, probably underused.
Right. No, that's powerful and it's fantastic. Wayne, what's something that you wanted to share that I was a horrible host and didn't ask you about?
Well, if I was to, I don't like the term words of wisdom, but if I was to share something that I think would be of value, I would say, and this is what I try and educate my daughter. So this is where
those are the best people we practice with. There is no doubt.
Exactly right. So I'm sharing what I would share with my daughter. I would say if you really wanted to create more impact in your life and your career, there's 3 elements that would go a long way. The first is to become a curious listener. So curiosity, of course, and we've spoken about that, but the listening is really an art and a science. And to become a great listener, and I know you are because this is your background, but to become a great listener, it's a journey. right? And you really have to practice this to become good at it. The second element that I would stack onto that is then to become a knowledge broker. And I consider myself now at my age quite a good knowledge broker. And there's many ways, 100 books a year, yes. And, you know, doing what you and I are doing with podcasts is another great way of gaining so much knowledge from fantastic resources.
Humbling, isn't it?
It's unbelievably so. So, you know, it's impossible in today's world for you to know everything.
Absolutely.
The rate of change is just far too great, and nobody has that capacity. Yeah, I'm not aware of anyone. So if there is somebody, they're going to be really an outlier in that very small percentage. So therefore, you have to be able to access knowledge from other people. And it's one thing to get that knowledge, but the real skill is, what do you do with it?
Right.
And so the reason I say I'm a knowledge broker is because the brokering part is where I bring that knowledge together and then say, well, what's valuable here for me?
Right.
So what can I take from all of this knowledge? As you said, you know, 2 books a week, that's a deluge of information, right? But it's of zero value if I can't do something with it. So being a knowledge broker really means that you bring it together, you simplify it in a way that you can understand it, but then also share it back. And the third thing is, therefore, to become a thought leader. So once you're able to do that, you become curious, you're a deep listener, you really tap into a wealth of knowledge, you're able to marshal that knowledge. But then the real value is when you then start to share that knowledge with others, that you get clarity and you help contribute to the growth of others. So they would be the 3 points I would leave with people.
I am so glad I asked that question. That was profound and so perfectly stated. Thank you. So that's gonna be the trailer for this episode, no doubt. Wayne, where can people go to find out more about you and dive even deeper in those beautiful 3 areas you articulated for us?
The best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'll be sure to respond. You can go to our website, which is, again, I'm sure Robin will link to it, coaching for companies. So 4 is the number 4.com. They're the 2 main areas. We have a podcast, which you can access. We have a page on LinkedIn. So it's called the ET Project.
We'll definitely link to that podcast in the show notes as well. It's fantastic. Please, so everyone listening, from one podcast to another, go to that show, like it, leave a review of it. It goes a long way when someone like Wayne is a thought leader, which means they've ingested the information, they've processed the information, they put that information out there. The more likes and the more shares it gets, the more it can make a positive impact on people's lives, which is so clearly what you've been doing your entire life. Anyway, keep going.
No, they're probably the 3 core areas where you can connect with me. I have a book called Solo Executives. You can find on Amazon. We're just in the process. Hopefully in February, we'll release a 2nd book.
Congratulations on that. Those are big deals as well. Huge amount of work. That's the other thing you kind of didn't even talk about. The amount of work that you've put in throughout your life requires a great passion and drive. And when that great passion and drive is focused on in the service of others, the impact is tremendous. And so I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do for everyone and that what you've done your entire life and continue to do. So you are making a tremendous impact. So thank you so much, Wayne.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Robin. You know as much as most about the amount of effort that goes into writing books, about just running a podcast, how much work's involved in a podcast. So it is, you have to have a degree of passion. You have to have a vision about where you want to get to with different things you're doing. But I find the underlying theme that holds it all together is you have to have a genuine desire and belief in that commitment.
Yeah, it's the greatest labor of love I've ever done. There is no doubt. That and my kids.
All right, Wayne, thanks again for coming on the show, sharing all this. Everyone that's tuning in, please check out the show notes and visit Wayne on his website. Check him out on LinkedIn. Check out his book. Check out his podcast. He has a plethora of information that I'm going to be pouring over numerous times as well. So everyone, thanks again for tuning in. And Wayne, thanks for your friendship. We'll talk to you soon.
It's been great. Thank you, Robin. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Forged by Trust. If you took away at least one new idea, make a note of it and pass it along to someone else who may need it. If you're interested in more information about how it can help you forge your own trust-building, communication, and interpersonal strategies for yourself or your organization, please visit my website at www.peopleformula.com. I'm looking forward to sharing my next Forged by Trust episode with you next week when we chat with Marty Groover and leaving nothing to chance.